So from everybody, this is the Senate Agricultural Committee and Friday, February 24th. And this morning, we're going to be talking with a group of farmers as well as Maddie Hickner in regards to the organic milk pricing issue. So I think we'll get started. You want to introduce your introduction?
Brian Collins, representing the Buckland District.
Irene Renner, Chittenden North, including Fairfax.
I can't be anything.
Bobby Star from Orleans County, Richie, Senator Weston McGill, and he's from Boyle. So, good morning, Maddie, and you have been working with the folks in regards to their situation, and yesterday we had health processors. We had them on the line from Stony Fields as well as now. And they kind of outlined their situation of why they can't increase the price of milk on their end. And they, I think they would like to do that if they possibly could, but Organic Valley testified to the fact that they're already, their budget is already projected to be in the red because they don't want to lower the price any more than what it is. They reported that the price is kind of stable down at $32 a hundredweight, and we kind of wanted to try to figure out our appropriations committee where the money, how much money is it at the end of the line that the consumers are paying on a 100-weight basis. And of course, they didn't give us any of those details. But if you start at $32 at the farm, and they did report that milk was selling for roughly between $10 and $11 a hundredweight at the store. And so you can kind of figure in between if you get 10 gallons for 100 weight, or 10 gallons for 100 weight, that you're talking about starting out with $100 at the end price, and then if they're paying 32 at the farm gate, and they did report that I guess Organic Valley has a small fee that they charge for pickup, but they both pretty much pay the trucking costs, so that adds to their cost, and so we're kind of putting the pieces together. And they're solid facts, but we're trying to get as close to true facts as we can. And so it's good to hear from you folks that produce the milk and tell us the issues on the farm end and how $32 is not cutting the rate to make ends meet. So welcome, and any other questions?
That's good, thanks.
Is it helpful for me to start with sort of a deal, like we benefit from an overview of just how we got to the situation? I think the dinner from the buyers, especially yesterday, they seem to cover that again pretty well for you, just kind of why we're in the situation we are with the market as we do.
Some production, and some consumer, buying power, reduce in sales. We pretty much heard all of that,
Yeah,
from them.
okay.
And there's no reason to doubt what they told us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just share, I believe most of the time, we need to hear from Jen. Jen has been putting together, who's our Government Services Director. And Jen's been putting together some numbers on that we've been gathering to provide some more data on specific farm losses from 2022. So we can give you some updated figures on that. And then I thought you might be interested if you haven't seen this chart to see this is from 2021. And this shows the trend in organic dairy. And I think we've raised to you all about the influx of milk and the oversupply being largely driven by these large farms in the West. And in particular, I'm drawing your attention to this chart here on the right hand side. Let's scroll a little bit. Shows the number of farms per state and the number of cows per state in 2021. If you look down at Texas, you'll see Texas has in 2021 13 farms, 51,000 cows. If you go up to Vermont, which is about 7 down from the top or 6 out from the top, we have 147 farms, 14,000 cows. So just those two figures alone give you a pretty good picture of the situation that organic dairy farms are up against nationally. So just thought this may be interesting to you all to see. And you can see too down below this chart that to the bottom right shows the volume of sales coming from Texas. The cows per herd at 3,430. Our average herd size is about 80 cows. So just to give you a kind of a big picture to go into this conversation with kind of what we've been up against in this market.
And we did ask the question, has milk from outside our region moved into our region? And I believe it was Stonyfields that said the only way it moves in is through powder. They, I think that's what he reported, they use it to manufacture the powder, to manufacture some products, but they didn't think there was fluid milk moving into the, I think that's what I recall.
My impression would be that Rolf may have been speaking specifically for Stonyfield and maybe for these organic dairy too, but when you look at private labels, the Costco and the Walmart organic milk, a lot of that milk, I believe, does come in from out west.
Oh, the organic?
Yeah, the organic, private labels through the big box retailers.
I believe that because I've looked at, of course, you can't tell them not coming from because they all run under a number. But we all know that we don't have a dairy that I've ever talked with that we started selling milk to Walmart. And the label, on the jug, I've never seen one like it from with a number close to ours.
Plan number, yeah, exactly. That's how you tell where it's coming from. So that's, I mean, that's, those are all we have, and then I have Jen has some slides that we're going to talk through that I will navigate for you all. Do you want to sit here and kind of go over?
Yeah.
That's like we could send that PDF too.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you have
There's a number of farms in Kelmer.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah,
very telling.
yeah. I only have, I should be charged. I'm not charged.
But we know
More like
Okay.
we need to go to.
So, Crosspaths will be on the first and the farmer service program at no cover all, so I'm doing a lot of business planning, transition planning, and cost reduction work with our organic dairy across the state, among other types of ones as well. So I just wanted to do, basically in the past week, I sent out a fleet to like some farms that would get me really solid records really quickly. And got back, data from 15 farms, I asked for cash, package, for 21 and 22, and then turnovers and milk production for both of those years as well. This is not really this chart, I'm just trying to tell you where we're about to talk about come from. And so I the data that we looked at is compiled like in the week or week and a half I had to do this. There were 12 farms I could aggregate that without having to go back and forth about clarifying questions, but still 3 more data sets to kind of integrate. But we have a really good basis to jump off with. I'm going to start when you look at this graph, when you guys did on Zoom, we were in the house tag and the joint committee with you all. But this is just emphasizing the blue line is pay price. The orange line is total cash expenses, and then the gray line is total cost or total expense per hundredweight. And so as you can see, we started in like 2019, and you have a pretty healthy spread between the total cost and the pay price, and then especially between the pay price and the cash expenses. And we're voting on that. That's what we have to focus on today. And obviously, we were heading in 2022 with this any margin between pay price and cash cost, which is not. Okay. So, again, this is from the 12 data I could quickly aggregate and then put into some more. We had a very good range of first size. We had a good mix of milk buyers of folks that contributed to this, and folks are located all around the state. So it's a good, representative spread. The herd fat average came up a little higher than what it is the true average about being in the state, but we had a range from 30 cow herd to 208 cow. So it was very.
So most of, if you have so you've got some well above the 80.
Yeah.
And you've got some in there below the average in so.
So for this sample, it was a herd fat of 98. I would say the majority of farms that contributing data were in like the 70 to 100 cow range, which is about average. So in 2022, the average pay price for these farms was $33. They look at cash expense per hundredweight worked out to be, this is actual numbers in 2022 from this data submitted, was $21.47. Which only leaves them $1.52 to pay family living, debt service, income taxes, and have some sort of ability to reinvest in their farm. What that works out to in terms of a gross number, if you use this milk production is the average across the farms that contributed data, multiplying that times the contribution margin means that on average these farms had $26,129 available for family living, plus principal payments, plus paying any income taxes they owe, which at this level probably not much, and then having some money to keep their farm going. Obviously that is very close to the property line in Vermont. And not typically what we saw with the graph that was
that much different. All right, so there's this is pulled basically aggregated P&Ls. So these are kind of like the highlight lines I just wanted to call your attention to from the P&L, which is why it starts off with like a couple income lines and then highlighting in on these major changes, both in percent change and dollar change across these expense categories. So as you can see, and I think like in the joint committee hearing, we had farmers testify that they were maximizing production, maximizing quality, maximizing milk per cow as best they could. And you see that reflected here where like people are doing as much as they can to maximize their income from their milk. And they were able to notch it up like, 2% because they're not a CAFO operation. Like they're not milking in Texas and seeing these numbers reflected, pushing their animals. They're farming in a full systems, responsible manner. This total
So
cash,
That
yeah,
purchase, feed purchase,
Yeah.
that's up 23.
23%. Yep, so then we're looking at custom hire, which is like fairly significant. This is, hiring in first spreading, baling, chopping. And the dollars are there just to give you a sense of the magnitude. So, close 23.7% increase in grain purchases. Many farms higher than that. Fuel and oil up by close to 75%, $12,000. Other highlights, looking at total.
That's what's driving probably the custom hire.
Exactly, yeah,
The fuel and
Yeah.
labor costs and.
yeah. And so we saw
equipment
orders of
costs.
magnitude increasing on there from those businesses, which understandable, right? Like, okay. We've got, the labor hires compared to maintenance, they kind of stuck out, but they're not obviously like the main drivers here. Many farms weren't able to like hire as many hours either because they were, having to pay a higher wage to try to keep people. And so then they had to, shuffle around with like more owner labor per se. Total variable expenses were up over 18% across these farms to the tune of $72,565, which is kind of mind-boggling. Fixed expenses didn't change a whole lot, which you wouldn't really expect. Those are like things that don't change with the amount you produce. So you've got your insurance, property taxes, things like that in there. Not at all significant change. And so then we look down to total cash farm expense, so variable plus fixed, you get to an increase of almost 15%, and an increase of 72,000. How that impacted, right? So we have this tiny little change on their like the total cash farm income minus this massive change in their total cash farm expenses. We get down to, on average, a net cash farm income reduction of 52%, 53%, which is $57,000 plus on average across these farms.
And what kind of a price, maybe you've got a chart that they would need to offset such a loss?
Yeah.
You got a chart on that or?
They do a chart. So this is like sort of a chart on that, sort of getting at like what this all translates to. So if we look at the production, and so I looked at cash expense per hundredweight and, did it on every farm, and then this is the actual average. So from 21 to 22, it increased basically $4, $2.92. It costs that much more per hundredweight to produce milk, just for cash expenses. So remembering like there's no debt, there's no principal payments on their debt, there's no family living draw coming out of that. So that's like just factoring in like the cash outlay to produce this milk. Cash expense per cow in there, just for an interesting fact, up $574 from 21 to 22. Again, here's this change in net cash income of $57,383. And then we need to call attention to this change in net cash income per hundredweight. The reason being, as I was looking at this data set and talking to farms, there's many farms that had a very significant cash expense per hundredweight increase. And then you also trickle down to this bottom part. Some of them didn't have that high of an increase because they reduced expenses like crazy. So they like cut grain because they were trying to save money. Milk production decreases, right? So the net cash income change on those farms was like fairly massive. And so if we're looking at losses that way, like they didn't keep their grain production steady to get a higher cost of production per hundredweight. They cut massively. And so they saw a decrease, a more significant decrease in their net cash income. So if I look at that metric across all the farms, right, and this was done individually and then averaged to get to this $4.01 loss per hundredweight, a net cash generated in 2022.
So they not only lost because everything went up in cost, but they lost income because they cut out the grain, so the cows produced less, and so they lost cash that way as well.
And piggybacking onto the fact that like it was a drought year. I mean, it wasn't an official drought declaration in many counties, but like, so we see like this poor feed quality going into the winter. And so they're not able to capitalize on their winter premiums as much because their milk production dropped further because nobody has good quality winter feed right now, or very few farms do. So it just was like compounding on that.
So,
That's all I wanted to say. I wanted
Yeah.
to turn it over to the farmers, but just trying to set the stage of what the folks that are gonna hear from are, you know, this is averages, obviously, and they're all gonna have their individual stories, but this is what the situation is that they're in.
now, do you deal at all with the, like the feed dealers? There's a couple that sell organic feed. And, you know, have you talked with any of them about how much they're carrying on the books because farmers weren't able to cover their grain bills?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that? You want me to?
You get, I think you should answer from like the broader perspective, but I also would say that like this cash expense to that point, that's a very good point, might not encompass like the ones that I had to adjust. I was like, oh, you have this, like your grain looks low, so there's like those 3 or 4 farms floating around that they're owe money for 2023 grain, or 2022 grain in 2023, and so I was like having to go back at those farms. So that actually, if those guys are in there, it might drive this up more.
We haven't had them in yet, but I know in past years, when the conventional guys were really in trouble, you could get the machinery people in and the grain people. And if the farmer was in trouble, they were also carrying a lot of debt from those farmers.
Yeah.
And it was nip and tuck for them whether they could make it because the farmers weren't making it. And, you know, they testified, and most people that you buy from would testify that farmers pay their bills pretty darn good. And they're just not getting enough money so there's any left for themselves or a little for us, but the farmer is usually the one that takes it the hardest, and because they try to pay their bills.
Right.
They have such little control, and what we've seen from these farms is that they've done everything they can to try to have enough to pay those bills. They have made all the adjustments that they could possibly make to create efficiency to be able to pay those other businesses. And I also think we can say confidently that scenario you described is absolutely what's playing out here in the organic side. And actually, Mike Thresher, who testified with us during the joint hearing, is a nutritionist at Morrison's Custom Feed, which is the primary organic grain dealer in the state. And he's also the chair of our board. So I think he would be, you know, willing to come in and testify from that perspective. But what we hear from farms is, you know, the people that they are not able to pay right now are often their neighbors and these other local businesses who depend on them as well. Yes.
Any questions? Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks for having. Betty, do you want to?
I'll start share. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have John on the line?
I think John is on. Yeah, looks like John's there.
John, can you hear us?
Hi, Bobby. I hope you can hear me better than I can hear you guys.
Well, can we turn that up a little?
Well, I've got a lot of interference, and I think it's just the acoustics in your room.
You're coming through right here.
All right, perfect. Because I've been sick for a week, so that's great too. So we've been part of the cost of production program that Jen was just talking about since Bob Parsons started doing it. And so some of those numbers she just gave you were from us. I wish I could be there in person. I would have printed out pages for you and brought them right to you. But on the 13th, I heard that Governor Scott was pushing back against having this money in the budget adjustment. And I wrote him an email that I'd like to read to you, and then I have a few other points I'd like to hit on it. My email says that I'm an organic dairy farmer from Guilford. I've been struggling with feeling alarmist about the situation in organic dairy and have been downplaying the issue for quite some time. However, it's reached a point where something must be done to help the farms and the farmers in this industry. I'm 33 and my 63-year-old father is my business partner. We've let our help leave without being replaced. We've gone months without a day off for family, neglected our equipment and our facilities to avoid paying the costs of repairs, and put thousands of dollars on personal credit cards to pay grain bills, and discussed selling the cows. But if the cows leave, the farm will have to be sold. We won't have a choice, just because my father can't afford for me to leave and afford to retire. Our family's legacy of farming in our town would end with me, and I'm the 9th generation to farm in Guilford. The situation in organic dairy has been going on for years, not just in 2022. In my estimation, our farm's in the $100,000 to $150,000 range behind where we should be at this point. Others are worse off than that. The resolution in the current bill would not come close, but for us it would be about $30,000, but it would put a light at the end of the tunnel. It is imperative that this legislation passes, as the USDA program will be like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. I fear for our farm, and I fear for others around the state. I also fear for the farmers, as losing the farm could very well result in stresses that could lead to suicidal thoughts and actions. I have experience myself in mental health issues. I've been through rehab for mental health issues, and I have a therapy appointment every week. And I talk about this every week with my therapist. Please reconsider your thoughts on this money. The language is used because the Agency of Agriculture rules require the input from NOFA, which they've started to get together. And I admire your fiscal restraint, but there's no more time. It must happen now, and the industry needs your support. Thank you. So I wrote that on the 13th, so a week and a half ago. Luckily, my car was on VPR when I took my 5-year-old to the bus. She's my oldest. My wife is pregnant, 9 months pregnant with our 4th child. The 2 middle are foster kids that we hope to adopt this year. And it's astounding the difference that I feel like the loss of farms has been normalized in the state of Vermont over the last decade and a half. When I was in the 2+2 program in 2009, there was a huge outcry because the state went below 1,000 farms, and we're about to hit 500. And, tourists come to see the landscape of Vermont. But if you drive up 91, what do you see? Just trees, because there's no more farms there. And it's really hard to imagine not farming. I've geared my life towards farming since I was 13. And I hope that at least one of my kids will want to do it after me. My family hasn't been able to accumulate intergenerational wealth because we've moved from farm to farm. My great grandfather sold his farm to my grandfather, so he had to pay for it again. And then he sold it off and then went to work for my great uncle. And then my dad bought this farm. And now I'm going to have to buy this farm so he can retire because he's put all the money he's ever made here in the last 40 years back into the farm and hasn't saved anything for retirement. My take home pay is $75 a day. And I'm the bookkeeper and I can't afford to pay myself. The money on the credit card I mentioned in that letter to Governor Scott, the grain company, Morrison's wasn't going to come with no more grain. And so I called him and I paid with my personal credit card. And I still haven't been able to start paying it down. In January, we hit our line of credit for another $20,000 worth of grain, and I owe them $12,000 again. I'm screwed. And I don't know what else to do. If I leave as a business partner, my father will have to buy me out. And to do that, he'd have to sell the farm. And the farm would be gone. You know, I can do better for myself with another job. I could get a job and just work a 9 to 5 and be fine. But I don't want to. I want to farm. And I can see it working, but not in the current system. We need a complete systemic change in dairy in general, not just organic. Having the margin protection program is a terrible feeling to have to buy insurance in case the market sucks. And then, since we don't have an organic version, I have to root against my friends in conventional, because if their margins are good, then that money that I paid out for the margin insurance doesn't do anything. And it takes all the fun out of it, being a farmer. It takes, all the enjoyment out of it, because all I can think about is money. We've reduced our payroll to nothing. We just hired a kid, but I'm only paying him $8 an hour while I train him. I'm going to need to pay him $15 an hour or he's going to leave. I can't buy equipment. I can't fix equipment. I've got 100-year-old slate roofs that I can't afford to repair. I've got 60-year-old aluminum roofs I can't replace. But I can do better for myself. I can do better for my family. I can do better for my community. And I can do better for the state. But I can't afford it. Last night I was out on I-91 until about 11 o'clock because I'm also on the fire department. I'm an EMT, a firefighter, and I'm on the board of trustees. So I was at pre-town meeting, and then we went to the interstate for a tractor trailer that flipped around in the median. And, I can't do that and maintain this. Something's got to change, and I don't know where to start. But if the state wants to declare that they support agriculture and dairy, then at some point they need to step up and prove it. And I haven't had a day off with my family since June. And, my savings is drained. And it shouldn't be this way. That's all I've got. I'm just gonna talk in circles if I don't stop, so.
John, thanks, thanks a lot for your, for your testimony. I had not heard that the governor was against, paying this money out. I think,
No, it was the push back to the budget into the next year. I think the urgency, there was a statement about the lack of urgency, and the urgency's there.
yeah,
And
I think to
I
clear
don't know how
that
to
up,
make it heard.
you know, the House was in the process of voting the supplemental budget out. And I'm not saying this to make any excuses, just telling you the facts. And what that was the day after we had that hearing. And what they did is they went to the Appropriations Committee a day late and a dollar short, you might say, because the committee was in the process of voting out the supplemental budget. And they said it's too late to add this in. We'll put a note at the end of the budget, kind of holding the 9.2 million and get it over to the Senate. Well, it came over to us with that note at the end of the supplemental about the retaining of 9.2 million. And the chair of appropriations said to us, now we worked simultaneously with the House on the supplemental. So we had basically a week or so left to tidy up everything and make any changes from what the House proposed, what we want, but there was not ample time to put a plan together, because one thing, I mean, you'd appreciate this, that we don't usually spend money without a plan to how to spend the money, who's going to handle it and how it's going to be handled, as well as trying to figure out what's going to stop this from happening in 23.
Well, the problem is it already is happening in 2023. And that was going to be my next question is, you know, what about next year and the year after? Because it's a broken system.
We've been working on this, not steady, because we, you know, our plate's pretty full. But what we did have the buyers in this week here, and they told us that they didn't see the price going up a great deal in 23, that it was stable where it is, but they did not project any big jumps in milk pricing to them, or to that they could pass on back to the farm. And we did talk about the $1 million that's in the federal program, and have talked to our congressional delegation in regards to, you know, what does the million, where's it going? Who's it going to, and for what purposes? And we haven't gotten any answers from them yet on where that's going to happen. I think yesterday we also heard that there was a bunch of other money in the pipeline. Was it 300? Yep. There's another 300 million in the federal pipeline that's coming to into the Ag Agency or USDA, but we haven't got any strings on that, and to where the heck it's going and who's going to be able to get it. And in that. We've also talked with our federal delegation about the DMC program that you guys don't qualify for that because they haven't got a two-tiered system, and trying to get that put into place at the federal level to help down the road, so that if your feed costs and your milk price, drops between like $9.50, like the conventional guys are, or I don't even know if that $9.50 is a good price, to have the spread, but there should be a spread in there so that you guys would qualify for that DMC program, which last year we paid the insurance premium for farms, but you guys couldn't qualify. And so that needs to be fixed. I think, if we could have gotten started on this in December or sooner, or even January when we first got back, but we really didn't get going until Maddie had that hearing a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago. And so I don't think the governor is opposed to this. I think maybe our committee on the Senate side kind of put the brakes on the process because the House did not send a plan with the money, and the chair of Prope said to us, chair in Ag, well, you get together a proposal and bring it forth and we'll deal with it. So I don't think anybody has said no to the funding. I think we're all on board in helping you guys, but the legislature runs a little bit like on the farm, molasses runs outside in the winter, very kind of slow. And
That's not always a problem.
but I know that we respect and really appreciate all the good things that our ag community, whether it's organic or conventional, what they do for within our communities and for our state as a whole. And I feel that most legislators feel the same about that. I haven't heard any negative comments in regards to moving this forward, but we gotta have a damn plan to be able to convince the leadership that yes, we've got it figured out, and this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and this also is going to happen during the next year to alleviate the situation, so we aren't facing it again next year when we put the budget together. I don't know if the other committee members want to comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I agree with Senator Starr. It isn't so much that we don't want to help, it's just the process that's involved. And in many ways, if it had been included in the Budget Adjustment Act, it might have slowed things down versus just coming up with a separate bill with a certain amount of appropriation, or even put it in the big bill this year. Because if I remember right, the 9.2 asked the Agency of Agriculture to come up with a plan. They could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It would still take them a certain amount of time to get that plan in place. And then it had to come back to them or to the agency or the two committees. Yeah, and we would have had to approve it, which, as Bobby pointed out, we don't exactly move like rabbits sometimes. And so.
Did I give you a plan in like 20 minutes?
Well, I'm just telling you how I think the situation is. We want to,
Yeah, I understand.
but we want to make sure that if it's 9.2, that it's given out in kind of a thoughtful way to help everybody so that we don't face this again in next year. And I don't think I haven't heard anybody say, no, we don't want to help the organic farmers. That isn't true. It's just the way things kind of work.
My thought right now is that this needs to happen now for this year, and it needs to be included in next year's budget as well, because I don't see any sort of remediation in this issue. And then hopefully down the road it gets better. But, we're going to run into the same issue with conventional, and we always have. There used to be a 3-year cycle, but the 3-year cycle's over. But
Irene, did you have a question or statement?
Yeah, I very much appreciate John's testimony and his service to his community on top of all the stress that farming has caused him and his family. Would be very interested in hearing his plan because he's closest to it, being right on the ground there. So I'm open to hearing whatever he would propose. Thanks.
John, budget adjustment is just coming back from the House now.
Yep.
There's going to be a conference committee on the budget adjustment. And that's probably, we'll be lucky if we pass it before the budget adjustment before town meeting. That the budget adjustment had language that said that the ag agency was to come up with a plan by the 15th of March.
Right.
So, and then the governor has 10 days or 3 weeks to sign any bill. I doubt very much that the budget adjustment would be entered into law before the 15th of March. So just the timetable that was in the bill, it doesn't work.
Right.
If and quite frankly, what you bring up is what does the future look like, and what does the future look like for organic and everything? And if there is a discussion that has to go beyond paying retroactively and going forward, the best place to have that is in the budget. And the question is, how will that all fit together? Because I don't think anybody wants to pay for the past debt for the 130 odd farms that we're talking about, and then just have them go out next year and do that. So what's the long term? And there's always the possibility in the budget of when it passes, having that take effect on passage. So the budget adjustment in that, it raised the issue. I think it's got us all thinking about the issue, and no one wants these farmers to just go back. And it really becomes a timing issue, and how do we have a discussion about what's the future look like?
So, and John, a little good news on this whole discussion is that the chair of approach has basically agreed that when we do get the bill going, ready to go, it'll take effect upon passage. So it might even be quicker. You aren't gonna have to wait until July. And if we've got the plan worked out with the agency on how it's gonna be paid out, it may be even quicker than if the money had been appropriated in the supplemental. So, I didn't feel once we got that assurance that it would take effect upon passage, I felt a lot better about, we might even beat the timetable if it was stuck into the budget adjustment act. So, I wouldn't go to the bank and borrow on the money yet, but I think, I've talked with a soul up here that's opposed to helping our organic guys or any farms, actually. We have pretty broad support, or you folks do, and the Ag Committee does in both the House and the Senate.
And our state without agriculture is nothing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's our foundation, and has been, since the very beginning. And like Irene is from up in Chittenden County and Brian's from Rutland, but it's a city or the more dense population places that really cares the most.
They like to eat for some reason.
Well, I think it's kind of handy for all of us at least once a day to have a decent meal. But you ought to try trucking sometime. That's what I did for my entire life. It's
No, driving puts me to sleep.
So I just say, John, that a lot of what you said, some of us can relate to. At 35 years old, I left the farm because my parents couldn't pay me. I went to work at VSAC. I also watched my parents take care of my grandparents, buy them out to give them a retirement. And I built apartments thinking that 20 years from then, when I was taking care of my parents, I would sell the apartments to be able to not lose the farm. My mother died of cancer in her 60s, so that didn't materialize. But a lot of what you lay out, I totally get. We want firms to be successful. We want firms to be successful for the long term. I've now got 550 acres, beef cattle in the summer, and am scrambling to save a farm that my family cleared the land on in the 1790s. So I totally get your situation.
So, did you have any other comments, John?
My thought on an idea would be we all have our year-end slips from NFO or whatever our intermediary co-op is between us and Organic Valley or Horizon. We all have the statements saying what our yearly production is. And if we were to submit those to the Agency of Ag and have the money distributed based on that, I don't know. Have between NOFA having the directory of where the farms are, anybody who produced organic milk last year should submit their statement of production.
The agency is working on that as we speak, to get that figured out. Are we going to do it by the 100-weight, which is, I think probably going to be the most fair and equitable way to do that.
And by far the simplest.
Well, it's simple, but the conventional guys, you get capped out at a certain level. And I don't know because supposedly the more cows you milk and the more milk you send, the cheaper you can do it. We haven't heard back from anyone yet in regards to that. But that, there may be something built into it. So if you do have many large organic farms, we don't want the big guys to get it all. We want to be fair and equitable about how that gets, handled.
Yep.
So if you're welcome to stay on if you have time. We have.
I'm hoping to. Also, would you like my contact information? If you guys have any questions for me, you can email me or Jen can get it to you.
Yeah.
Jen, you have my email and my phone number, right?
Yeah, I can pass it along, John.
Okay. And I'm the office guy. I'm checking my email every day, so.
Yeah.
My cell service doesn't work here.
We have, Lyle Edwards, is he going to
I
be on?
don't think Lyle could make it, but we have Jeff here.
Can I ask a question of you before
Sure.
we go on? So I know across the board in the one set price, there are just plain fixed costs to running a farm. And a lot of those fixed costs are higher for the smaller the farm we get, that we have. So as we think about these payments, would it be helpful to think about, here's a base price per farm, and here's a cap of where we would go, or maybe not have the cap, but at least have a base price across?
What do you mean by base price? Like in terms of?
Like say,
Like
say
the
regardless of,
years.
because I suspect per hundredweight, it's more expensive to run a 40 cow farm than it is a 300 cow farm.
More expensive.
Yes.
Because, yeah.
And there's some concern with some of us that I like the farms where I see the cows out in the pasture on the hillside. I'm not as interested in the farms that are keep the cows in all day long, and you know, and for a number of reasons. But is there and you don't have to answer that now, but would there be a base price that we would give per farm and then do something above that?
Well, I'll just pose that like our largest organic farm is 300 cows.
Yeah.
And then all of the organic farms, you know, because they are certified organic, have grazing requirements. So
Right.
they're,
But I do know that when the milk truck stops, it's a flat charge per hundred or that they charge. So it hits the smaller ones hard.
well,
Well, that's actually not quite
it's
true.
not, yeah, it's not, I think you're thinking about the conventional hauling stop
Yeah.
charges, right? So like, it's all relative, it's all gonna be situation dependent, right? So we've got, and it's drilling down to, even if the cost, like, I'm trying to like keep this quick, because Jeff's hanging out.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
have to
I have
answer.
my statement in
I would
front of me
say,
for
like,
January.
I would say we don't have to worry about like supporting farms that keep their cows confined and off the land, because we're talking about, or we don't have those in this pool of farms.
Organic Valley, we pay
I hear you
200.
saying that, yeah, I get it, yeah, I would definitely.
And for Organic Valley, we pay $220 a month
Right.
for the stop charge. And then we pay a hauling charge that is equivalent to the national, the federal promotion dollars. So half of the Vermont dairy promotion dollars.
Yeah.
That's how Organic Valley and NFO operate their stop charges.
Jeffrey, you wanna, welcome this morning, and you got a few words to throw in here.
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfectly.
All right. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what best would maybe help you guys as you figure this out. I think every farm is in a different situation when you get down to the dollars and cents. I milk about 60 cows. But I've had the benefit of my father, who's 80, and my uncle, who's 70, still working for me for next to nothing, basically. So I've been able to keep my labor costs low. But as far as any expenditures, you know, it's basically gone down to nothing. You can't invest in any equipment. Been trying to keep costs at a bare minimum. In respect to grain bills and stuff, buying the grain as cheap as possible, as far as cutting out proteins and playing around with the mixes. So yeah, all that stuff that I think it was Maddie spoke at the beginning, as far as it has an effect on the herd averages and the amount of milk that gets produced in the year. So there's definite losses. And I think as you figure out how you're going to appropriate or disperse this 9.2 million, I think just rest assured that all these organic farms in the state, the money is not going to go outside the state once we get it. It's going to be used to reinvest in our businesses, also to pay down debt that we owe with your grain companies or dealers or neighbors. So the money's not going to go very far. It's going to stay in the state, if that's a reassurance for anybody who's looking to vote on this at some point. And so it is necessary, and it is an immediate problem going forward the next 5-6 months as we approach a lot of fuel costs in the spring. A lot of things happen, things break down. So the money would be a good investment, I think, in the organic dairy in this state. I think John talked about the problem is the system has a problem, and so whether we're going to face this again in the future, it's quite possible. But I think some of that needs to be solved at a federal level with some of these mega organic dairies in Texas and in Colorado, who are able to skirt around issues. Some of those loopholes have been started to get closed up, but when you have a massive inflow of organic milk into the market with a Costco or Walmart buying all their organic milk from one location, one farm, then it really affects the market as a whole. And I think that's really what's messed everything up as far as the promise of organic saving small family farms over the last 20 years. It's there's been some big players that got involved, and so solving that issue is kind of outside of Vermont's hands, I guess. But right now, this would definitely be a big help, and I think it would save a number of farms from going out of business immediately.
Questions for Jeff?
Jeff, where's your farm?
Georgia, Vermont, just south of St. Albans.
Thank you.
Do you belong to the co-op up there?
Yeah, I'm still. This used to be the St. Albans Co-op. Now it's DFA. Yeah, I'm still a member at the St. Albans Co-op, and also I ship my milk to Organic Valley. So. Yeah.
Do you have to pay dues into St. Albans Co-op?
Yeah, I do have to contribute to an equity program there, and I've talked with people at DFA about that, or the St. Albans Co-op, and it's basically an insurance policy that if Organic Valley for some reason stops picking up my milk, I will have a place to send it.
Yeah.
So I do remain a member there. Yes.
Yeah. Any other? No.
Thank you.
So do you have Zadam, Adrian on?
No, I think Adrian and
Adrian
Check and Judge wasn't able to make it either. I think just the timing was hard this morning for the folks.
So do you have anyone else that?
Nope, I think that's it.
Yeah. So I don't know, has anyone at the Ag Agency got in touch with you, Maddie?
Yeah,
In
we've been,
regards to putting a little payment plan together?
we have been in touch with them. We had an organic dairy task force meeting last Friday. And we've also met with them separately to start to put some structure on this. And I think one of the challenges is the agency that hasn't historically had a lot of great data themselves on organic farms. I think you heard from Edie yesterday that they don't actually differentiate in their system who's organic and not. So we've been working to make sure that they have that information clearly. And, and then Jen, this is why Jen's been, they've been trying to get some of these numbers on, profit and loss from last year, because the agency doesn't collect that kind of information either, but we have this long-running cost of production study. So we're in touch with farms and we're communicating that to the agency, so they're aware of it too.
Yeah, it would be good to know how many you have at that small, say from 75 down or
Yeah.
50 down. Because we may want to build a base amount
Yeah.
in there that if you're under X number of pounds, you'd get X for dollars.
Yeah.
And keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
And that, if we could get the year-end milk production slips. So, the other thing, we usually always, when we deal with dairy, we deal with the whole crew. Just those small farms or not just the big farms. And I think, we made a mistake, maybe not pushing, not knowing, of course, we didn't deal with it, was the difference on the DMC program.
Yeah.
Because we assumed that our organic guys, if their feed went above a certain level above their pay price, that they would qualify.
Yeah.
And the true facts are that it didn't work.
No.
And I know some of the crew in Washington are supposedly working on trying to fix that for the future.
Yeah.
And we, as you know, we put a certain amount in the budget 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
To cover that premium cost. And if I've been thinking that there isn't enough money left in the kitty to pay everybody's this year.
Yeah.
And so to be somewhat fair about the whole issue, we might be able to ask the Probst to put X dollars into the DMP program for the conventional guys and, 9, whatever it figures up to be into the, for the organic guys. So, do you ever get a chance to testify with the federal farm people?
Yeah, we work with a lot of national partners. We talk to our congressional delegation, USDA, and we're in touch with USDA on, throughout the Farm Bill process. Yes, we'll be weighing in on that, and we'll be pressing for this organic version of the dairy margin coverage program. And there is a group of organic dairy producer associations and farmers who meet regularly. Actually convened by the Organic Farmers Association, which is a national organic producer group, to hear really from all regions of the country about what's needed to fix these long-term structural issues within organic dairy. So there's a lot of folks thinking about that and working very actively on it.
Yeah, it's a real bummer. I don't know how come everything's gone to heck at the same time, but
Yeah.
It doesn't get any easier.
Well, I do think though, I think you hear often from farmers who, even though they're struggling, they're determined and they see hope, on the other side of this thing for a future that could be different. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday or earlier this week about the origin of livestock rule, which is one of the loopholes that we're working on closing, that the rule finally passed at USDA last March. And there really are instances we hear from inspectors who inspect some of these larger farms in Colorado and Texas. They're raising heifers conventionally. And I talked to somebody who's inspected a farm who was raising 3 groups of 300 heifers annually, conventionally, which is obviously much cheaper to do than raising them organically, and integrating those into the system on an annual basis. And that has stopped now. So we're really seeing some huge potential for these loopholes to be closed. And as I think we've shared, the accreditation of the Texas Department of Agriculture is under review and hopefully being repealed, which will stop that massive glut that you saw earlier on the screen of organic milk from Texas. So it's a complicated picture. It's not, there's not a silver bullet solution, but I think there's a lot of things in the works that make me feel hopeful. And I hope make the farmers feel a little bit more hopeful too.
No, I don't know, the big dog gets the bone, it seems like every time. And it's a bummer trying to, bail the little guys out, which we have all small farms really, if you look at the grand scheme of things in Vermont.
Yeah.
And, no, I don't know how we compare with other states on farm assistance, but I know we do a lot with a small amount of money to help our ag sector stay vibrant and healthy. But if they'll hang in there with us, we're getting closer to a resolve every week. So
I was surprised when the ag agents came in and said they have no idea what people like each farm produces.
Yeah, it'll be a combination of effort. It'll be some data that we have, some data that the farms have. Here, John. But I think hopefully you've heard from enough folks now that everybody's kind of at the ready to contribute whatever you need from each of us, and we're talking to each other too.
Yeah. We'll keep pounding away, and if something comes up on your end that could be helpful to us, we'd appreciate getting that info.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want us to connect you with anybody from the feed dealers, I'm sure Mike would be happy to come in and talk to you, Mike Thresher, anybody else from those, ancillary businesses, that would be helpful. I'm sure that could be arranged too.
Well, it would be good maybe hear from, is it Morrison Feeds that does the bulk of it?
Yeah, I think we figured out it's 75% or so. Yeah.
And it would help us explain to the floor, eventually, we're gonna have to sell this to our other members. But it would be good to hear the facts from Morrison Feeds. The one in, the other feed dealer, small one in Bethel or Royal.
Is it Green Mountain, Jim? Green
Do
Mountain.
they do organic feed too, or are they just?
Yes, yeah. I forget what town, I'm just pausing because I forgot what town they're located in, but
Morrison out of Below St. J.
Yeah, Danville area, right?
Barnett.
Or Barnett.
Yeah. They do the bulk of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll get them in just to get the info so we can verify that they're having problems because farmers can't pay them.
Yeah.
And and they do a lot for that community area over there at Morrison's. I know I went to the Caledonia County Fair and they donated a bunch of money to upgrade one of the barns at the fair. And, so it's those kind of groups that, and the farmers keep them alive, and they all help keep the community alive, and that's why it's doubly or triply important to keep what we have going.
Yeah.
Well,
Can I add one more thing?
Sure, John.
Another big issue that we're going to run up against, and I know it's probably none of your purview, but it's something you guys might want to keep on your radar, that the land ownership and a lot of people coming to the state makes it harder and harder as well. My parents are in their 60s and they're my youngest landlords. And we manage 400 acres, but we only own 70 of those 400 acres. And we have a 283 acre farm, but 210 of it's woodland.
Yeah.
And so all of the land we use, for the most part, is other people's land that we can use for free. And if people come up from the cities and start buying it, then I'm gonna have to start paying more rent. I'm gonna have to start, competing to buy out open land with people that actually have money. Or I'm not gonna have land to farm in town.
That's already happening in some areas, and
It's happening here.
yeah, I bet it is down south here. Thanks a lot, John, for your time, and Jeffrey, for your time. Keep up the hope, and we'll keep working and get you something here as soon as possible.
Well, thank you for having us on.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Next time I'll make it in person.
Very good.
Stay warm in there.
Thank
Oh, yeah.
you, you too.
Looks like he's outside.
Oh, yeah, I'm outside. See you later.
Bye-bye now.
So we had.
Yes, what's that?
2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, Travis.
Hey, Travis, we're gonna take a little break,
Absolutely.
and be right back, so if you hang with us, we won't be gone long.